Hello everyone. Today we're going to be sculpting an alligator. A few notes before we get started. I'm using both a mouse and a pen tablet. The mouse I find is easier to navigate with, and the tablet is easier to sculpt with. Make sure that you save your project often. Sculpting and especially remeshing tend to tax a lot of less powerful computers. And make sure that you're patient while sculpting. A lot of it is fine details and you can't rush through it, otherwise it's going to look worse and you're going to ruin your topology. And with that out of the way, let's get started. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to highlight everything on the screen, hit X, and we're going to delete it. Now we're going to add in our reference image of our alligator. So we're going to go Shift A, down to Image and Reference. This is going to bring up a screen to select the image that you want. You won't be able to see it because the screen recorder that I'm using it only shows one window at a time. So once you find the image that you want, it's going to come through whichever way your camera is facing. So that's why it's angled like that. I do have another video of how to use reference images that I'll add a link to. But basically we just want this somewhere back here and straight up and down. So we're going to zero out all the rotations. Okay, now we know it needs to go 90 degrees on the Z-axis. So just type in 90, and then it needs to flip 90 degrees on the Y-axis. Or is it the X? Yeah, on the X-axis. Now we can grab it with G, push X so it only moves along the X-axis, and we're just going to push it back a bit. Now if we come to the front view, we'll zoom in a little bit, you can see that the alligator has the lower jaw, which is kind of like it's a good area to start, and then the upper jaw and kind of the neck. So what we're going to do is we're going to build these two parts separately, and that's just going to make it easier for us in the long run, rather than trying to sculpt out the upper jaw and then using the same mesh, try to sculpt out the bottom jaw. So now we're going to push Shift A, add a mesh, and we're going to add a UV sphere. Now we're going to go back into our front view by pushing 3 on the number pad. And we're just going to move this down to about there. It doesn't need to be perfect here. And there we go. It doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be close enough so that when we start sculpting, we can get the right proportions. Now we're going to go into sculpting. And I'll pull these out again so that everyone can see. Okay, now we're going to use the grab tool, which the shortcut is G. So we're going to push G. We're going to spin our view. Now, if we go into the front view like this, it's going to be tough to pull out straight this way, and we're also going to get a few other artifacts on the back. So we're going to hit the mirror X up here. Now, if you're doing it at a different angle, you'll have to play around. Basically, we want the front and the back to both move at the same time. So you can see here, so now when we pull, it's going to pull out both sides. Which right there, that brings me to my next point, is don't pull the mesh too far all at once. Just go in little increments, because if you go in a long stretch, it's going to break your topology. So Control-Z to undo all that. All right, now we're ready to get started. We're going to push F, increase our brush size, and we're just going to start pulling out the bottom jaw here. And anytime you want, you can push 3 on the number pad, as long as you're in the same view I am. 3 on the number pad, and you can see how far we need to pull that out. So we're just going to keep slowly pulling. Now we're going to go back to the front. And you can see here, make sure you're always checking your angles, because from the side view, it looks like we're pulling it out. But if you go into the top, we're missing the center. So we'll pull the center out. Now this is time consuming. You do need patience with sculpting. For this video, I am going to start, once we get going, I'll start time-lapsing it so you can just kind of see. I'll show you how to do the next step, and then I'll speed up the video so that you guys don't get bored. So we're just going to keep pulling the mesh And we'll push that up. And we'll try to find that back, this jawline here. So we're going to pull that back, pull that down. And now I am right now still using the mouse, just so everybody knows. Now also keep in mind, we start with broad strokes and then we fine tune the detail. So although this doesn't look like much yet, it just needs a little bit more work. And once we actually start getting into the small details, especially like the areas around the teeth and around the eye, that's when things really start to come together. So we're just gonna move this up. And that's the great thing about sculpting is you can always change it. If see how his jawline kind of goes up and then up here. We don't need to do that right now because we're just doing the broad strokes. We do need to pull up this inside part though. There we go. Oops. So you can see here, I overstretched this, which is okay for now. But it means I can't select where I want to. See where my cursor is? I can't get the dots there. So I think we're gonna leave it at that so that we can start getting to the fun part. All right, now we're gonna go up here to remesh. 0.1, that's gonna be fine for what we're trying to do right now. And we're gonna hit remesh. Now, if your computer is a little slow, don't keep clicking remesh because Blender will remember that and it'll try to remesh it however many times you clicked it. So with that done, remesh at 0.1, which is great for now. Now we can start kind of adding in, we can add in this little part here, kind of clean up around the edges because we have more topology to work with. So first thing I'm going to do is grab the clay strips. And now I'm going to start using my pen tablet. We're going to shorten that. And we're just going to kind of bulk out this area. See how ours goes around the back? We kind of want that flat on the sides. So we're just going to add clay strips around here just to build it out. And same thing as when we were using the grab tool. Just go in small areas because if you keep going and going and going, actually that wasn't too bad, but you are going to break your topology. So we're just going to add a little bit of mass back here. All right, and I think now we'll start time-lapsing everything so that you guys can just kind of see the process. And then when there's something else to learn, we'll come back. All right, now you can see that the topology is kind of, we have small squares in here, large squares over here. So we're gonna increase our brush size. We're gonna hold down shift to use the smooth brush, but I don't like, smooth brush starts, the default is 0.7 strength. That's tough to work with because as soon as you go, it just flattens everything. So that's not what we wanna do. We just kind of wanna soften it. So we're gonna change our strength to 0.2 and make sure you're on the smooth brush. And then we can go back to clay strips and we're gonna hold down shift and just one pass, maybe a couple more, just to kind of smooth it out. And if you end up getting rid of too much, you can always just add it back in, smooth it out just a bit, especially for areas up here. You always want the topology to be roughly the same size. The longer you go without adjusting that and without fixing it, the harder it's going to be for you in the long run. Now, the next thing we want to do is kind of carve out the inside of his mouth. We're going to add the tongue later, but right now we want to get the bottom of his mouth lower. So we're going to grab the draw brush. We're going to push F, lower our brush size, and holding control, control makes your brush do the inverse of whatever it does. So draw normally builds up. If you hold down control, it's going to kind of scrape it out. And that's what we're looking for. There we go. And we're just going to keep scraping away. There And I think even back here, we'll kind of push that down. Now, a lot of this will be covered by the tongue, so you don't need to worry about it being too smooth. But you can see back here, let me see if I can zoom in. The topology kind of got warped, and it's going to start creating artifacts pretty soon. So we're going to increase our brush size a bit, hold down shift, and we're just going to kind of soften those out. There we go. And we'll do it down here too. Why not? Okay. Now we've got the base. So if we go like this, the nose, or the bottom lip here needs to kind of curl up. So we're going to grab the grab brush again, and we're just going to grab that and pull it up. There we go. And maybe pull this part down. Let's try that. Okay, it's looking a little bit better. There we go. And we'll just grab the middle here. Okay. Okay, next we're going to do the teeth. But before we do that, I just want to shade smooth the mesh that we have here. It makes it kind of easier when you start doing the fine details because you can see how it actually looks. To do this, you'll notice if you push tab, it goes into edit mode in here. If we tab back into sculpt mode, if you push control and tab, you're going to bring up the wheel. So we want to go to object mode. And now make sure you're in object mode up here. Right click, shade smooth. Well, there we go. Now to get back, you can either go to sculpt mode in here or control tab and down to sculpt mode. Okay, now for the teeth, you can try using maybe the snake hook. I don't like doing this method. I find the snake hook, it's good in a lot of situations, but where you would think that you'd be able to create like a tooth with it, it doesn't really work. It's too, we don't need a triangle, or we don't need a pyramid here. What we want is a round tooth, because that's the type of teeth that alligators have. So we're going to go back into object mode, control tab, object mode. We're going to hide our sphere, which, let's move this down and let's keep things organized. So let's click our sphere, make sure that's selected. We're going to hit F2. We're going to call that lower jaw. There we go. Now we'll hide it. And now make sure you're in object mode. We're going to go Shift A, mesh, UV sphere. Now we're going to push 3 on the number pad to go to this view. And now we want to find a tooth where we can see basically the entire thing, which I think is going to be this tooth here. So we're going to scale down our sphere. G to move it over. And maybe we'll zoom in a bit so we can all see what's going on. Okay, now we're going to go back into sculpt mode. So control tab, sculpt mode. And again, we're going to use the grab brush, and we're just going to push in all the sides until it matches the tooth. So F, we'll get a bigger brush going, and just start clicking and pushing it in. Okay, now that we have that one tooth complete, what we're going to do is it's called an instance. It's basically duplicating the object, but your computer doesn't need to render it or do the calculations on it every single time. It just renders the original object, and all the other ones just follow suit. So with our tooth selected, first we're going to hit F2 and rename this tooth. And just for a little housekeeping, we're also going to add a new collection. So up here, new collection, we'll rename that by double clicking, and we're going to call this teeth. There we go. And just move tooth into there. The reason we're doing this is that we can hide all the teeth at once if we need to. And it'll also make it, if we want to switch between the lower jaw, the tongue, and the upper jaw, we'll easily be able to switch through those without having to go through like 50 sets of teeth. So with the tooth selected, first we're going to rotate it around so that it's the right side up for the lower jaw. And we're also going to rotate it on the Z axis. There we go, just so that the arc of the tooth goes like this. And now we're just going to put it into place. So right about there. And yours is probably going to be in the middle. I had to redo this section of the video, so it was already lined up. But once you have it lined up, we want to make sure that this bottom round base is inside the mesh, just like that. And we'll also rotate it back a little bit. Now, I'm going to follow this, the reference image closely, but if the teeth aren't the exact same, that's fine. No one's going to notice. So we're just going to slide that over. So we got this one. Now we're going to do the one behind it. So like I said, we're going to use Alt-D, and that creates a duplicate. And we're just going to slide that back. And we're going to push 3 on the number pad just to get back into this view. Rotate that around a bit. Maybe slide over just a bit. Also, keep in mind that my reference image, it's not perfectly, it's not a perfect side view. So we're going to follow it, but not to a T. Now for the smaller teeth, again, Alt-D. For the smaller teeth, we can just put it deeper inside the lower jaw. So once you move it, grab it, Z on the, Z to move it just along the Z axis. And we'll have to move it back a little bit, something around there. And we're just going to keep on going. And you can also see now, this is why we wanted a different collection for all the teeth, because we're going to have about 50 here. So I'm going to speed up this part so you don't have to, so you don't get bored. But basically, Alt-D, move it around, scale them, rotate them, and off we go. Okay, now that we've got the teeth done on this side, we only did up to about midway. We're going to select all of the teeth. So on the right side here, we're going to hit tooth. And we're going to scroll down to the last one, hold down shift and click so that they're all selected. Now, what we're going to do is we're just going to duplicate these and mirror them on the other side. So Alt-D to duplicate, and then we're going to right click just to drop it. We're going to hit Control-M. And then we're going to hit X to mirror it along the X axis. And there we go. And then we're going to click and drop. Now we need them obviously on the other side here. So GX, and we just slide them over. There we go. Now we'll rotate around just to make sure that they're in a okay position. And that should work. Now, the front teeth, they look very identical, which is not what we want as far as realism goes. Since this is just a tutorial video, I'm going to leave it, but for your projects, make sure, like shrink some teeth, angle them differently. Just make sure that it's not the exact same on both sides. Now with the teeth there, we're going to do the final touches for the bottom jaw, and we're just going to be done, and we'll start working on the next part. So basically what we want to do is get this looking as much like this as possible. We've got the basic shape. We've got the teeth so that we know where we're trying to get the lip to hit. Basically, we just need to kind of square off this back part and maybe add a little bit more meat to the chin and get this part back here to really come down and over instead of being rounded. So right now we're in object mode. So we're going to select our lower jaw, this one here, and we're going to go back up here, or you can push Control Tab, and we're going to go to sculpt mode. Now, first, I think we're going to start with back here, and we're going to work our way to the front. So, let's zoom out a little bit. We're going to start with the draw. We might use clay strips, but right now we just kind of want to add girth, just like that. There we go. And then add more down here. There we go. And then up at the front here, let's put that into view. We could just move the teeth back, but I think we're just going to kind of pull out the lip. There we go. Now my computer has started to slow down because it started a Windows update. So I think I'm going to come back once that's done. Okay. I'll just keep adding some bulkiness back here. What we're going to do is we're going to bulk this out a lot, and then we're going to use the scrape tool and kind of shave it back in. Between the scrape and the smooth, we should be able to get kind of this flat texture it's got going on here. So we're going to come around back here. We're going to really make sure we add some meat back here. There we go. Move around to the side. There we go. We'll just get underneath there. There we go. Okay. Now you can see like down here, that needs to be shaved down. So we're going to hold down Shift. Kind of soften that out. There we go. Soften this one out. And there's a line right in the center here, right there. We're just gonna hold down Shift and get that out of there. Okay. Now this part, I mean, I'm sure it's not fun to watch, but this is basically the amount of effort you have to put in to get a sculpt that looks fairly realistic. Once I'm done here, I'm gonna time lapse through. Once I'm done, I'll kind of explain everything that I did. But yeah, let's speed this part up. Okay, and that's basically going to do it for our lower jaw for now. Basically, all I did was kind of work with the topology over here, just kind of bulk it out and kind of get that feel so that it all feels connected, which I think we could even do a little bit more. But we're going to remesh it later and get some hard edges, especially around in here. So right now we're going to do the tongue, which is going to be nice and easy. Basically, it's the exact same way we started sculpting the lower jaw. That's what we're going to do for the tongue. And since the tongue has no teeth or anything really to sculpt on it, it should be nice and quick and easy. So right now we're in sculpt mode. We're going to go back to object mode. We're going to push Shift A, mesh, and UV sphere. And we'll hit 3 on our number pad just to go to the side view. And we'll bring that down. Scale it, and we'll also see, actually that worked out pretty good as far as the size of the tongue is going to be. Now we'll go back here, we'll right click, we'll go shade smooth, push Control Tab, go back into sculpt mode, and we're going to push G for the grab tool. There we go, and F to scale it up, and there we go. Now, I think I just put that into our teeth collection. So we're going to move that to the top one. And we're going to push F2. And we're going to rename this tongue. Something like that. Okay. So now we're just going to pull on that until it's about the length that we need. And right now we're not trying to get it perfect. Right now we're just working on the length. And also, since this is... Actually, I'm going to hide our teeth collection. Maybe that'll help. Now, I did forget to use the mirror up here, so that's why it's going off to the side. So we're going to Control Z back to when it was just a sphere. And I'll time lapse it just so you guys don't have to watch me do that again. Oh, okay, and that's pretty much it. Now we're going to go back into object mode, and now we're just going to try to move it into position. So we're going to rotate it kind of like that, and then push it down. Okay, now we're going to go back into sculpt mode, and we're going to bring the front of the tongue up. Something like that. Okay. Now the back, I think, really needs to be pushed down. Okay. Maybe a bit. And we'll push the tongue at the front back down. Okay, now, I mean, inside the mouth, that's not really what we're focusing on here because there's not really any sculpting. So we're going to leave it here for now. We'll put the teeth back on. It looks good enough for the stage that we're at. Next, we're going to do the upper jaw, the eyes, and the neck. All right, and to do the upper jaw, we're going to start with the eye, and then we're going to kind of manipulate the mesh to go around it so that we get the positioning right. So we're going to go back into object mode, make sure our top collection is selected here. We're going to go Shift A, Mesh, UV Sphere. Now we're going to hit 3 to go into the side view, and G to grab it, S to scale it. Now, one thing to keep in mind is the angle that my reference image is, his eyes aren't going to be, his eyes are going to be a little different, but you can see his eye kind of lines up with the corner of his mouth here. So if we go maybe a bit behind it, that should line up properly. We do want it to be the same size though, because that's what our reference, or that's what our object already is. So we're going to scale it up about like that. And there we go. Now, obviously his eye isn't in the middle of his head, and judging from here, you can't really tell. It is inset a little bit, so I think we're just going to go to the front view by pushing 1 on the number pad, and we're just going to slide it along the x-axis until it looks right. About right there. If we look back here, it kind of lines up with the inside of the mouth, like just inside the mouth. I feel like ours is basically there. Okay. Now we've got the eye where we want it. Now we need to duplicate it onto the other side, and we want it to be perfectly mirrored. So to do this, actually first let's rename it. So we're going to push F2. We're going to call this eye. Let's call it left eye. There we go. Okay, now we're going to push Alt-D to duplicate. Then we're going to right-click just to drop it. And then down here in our object properties, this orange box here, along the x-axis, we're going to click that. And right at the start, we're just going to make that negative and hit Enter. And there we go. Now we are going to rename this to right eye. And there we go. Now we can start trying to sculpt out the upper jaw. So we're going to go Shift, with this collection up here selected, we're going to go Shift A, Mesh, UV Sphere, and then we're going to hit 3 to go in the side view here. And I think we're going to start it kind of back here. Now this one's going to be a little different because we're going to rotate our UV sphere to kind of match this angle that the alligator's upper jaw is on. The bottom one was basically flat, so that's nice and easy. But for the upper jaw, we're going to rotate it about like that. It doesn't need to be perfect. And I think just to make it easier for us, actually, yeah, we'll just leave it like that. Okay, we're going to right click, go shade smooth, and back into sculpt mode. Okay, now you've seen this done before. It's the exact same way I did the bottom one. We're going to use the grab tool. We're going to pull it. And now if your topology starts to break or as you can see at the end, hold down shift and you can kind of soften it back in. So we're going to Control Z out of that. Now I'm going to time lapse the whole thing because we already did it once. You don't need to see me do it again. Okay, now that we have the basic shape, we can get into some finer details. You can see I pulled it way too long to start. I should have started back here and worked it forward, but I was rushing through it, like I said we're not supposed to do. But we have the basic shape. It's about where we want it. Maybe we'll bring the nose in a little bit. There we go. So now make sure that your upper jaw is selected, which we're going to rename upper jaw just to keep organized. Now we're going to go remesh. We're going to change the voxel size. Actually, we'll leave it at 0.1 for now, just to get the eye sockets and get the nose up. And then we'll change it to 0.01, and then we'll really go into fine details. So remesh, 0.1, remesh. Now we're going to grab some clay strips and we're going to start bulking them up. So we're going to change our brush size by using F, and we're just going to build up inside here. Now, I covered up the eyes just so that we can really get the eye socket in there. And with the draw, we're going to hold down Control. Actually, we'll change our brush size. We're going to hold down Control, and we're going to dig in here until we find it. There it is. Hold down Shift, and there we go. That's good enough for now. We got at least the eye sockets done. Maybe we can put a little bit more underneath the eye. Basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to go around the nose. I'm going to round this out, and you can see that the tip of the nose needs a lot more meat there. So we're going to build that up. Same process as always. We're going to draw or use clay strips to build it up. Shift to smooth it down if we need to. And I'm going to start the time lapse. Okay, and here we are. Basically, I just try to match kind of the shape that was going on in our reference image. We can always touch that up later. Once we get the teeth in, we can start kind of sculpting out the inside of the mouth so that we know how deep it needs to go, so that it looks good. So having said that, I say we bring back our teeth. Now we're going to go back into object mode, so Control Tab Object Mode. And we're going to select tooth, which I think this was our original one. So that's the one that we're going to use. And same deal as before. We're going to push Alt-D to create an instance of it. And then we're going to move it up. Now these ones, obviously, we're going to need to rotate upside down so that the alligator can actually eat. And there we go. So same as before. Basically, I'm just going to try to match roughly what's going on in our reference image up here. I guess we can zoom in there. It doesn't need to match perfectly, but you want to get it close. So we'll time lapse again, and once I'm going to do the same as the bottom. Once I'm about halfway, I'm just going to select all the teeth, which is going to be starting, I believe, at 42. So every tooth it'll probably be different for yours, but I'm going to select all the teeth, duplicate it using Alt D, Control M to mirror it, and X to mirror it on the X axis. So here we go. Okay, and that'll do it for the teeth. Now again, just like we did the bottom, we're going to take our upper jaw, which in our long list of items here, we're going to choose upper jaw. There we go. And we're going to go Control Tab, back into sculpt mode. Now this is when we're going to do the final touches. So you can see there's kind of these little spikes on the alligator's back. Few little round pieces here, and you can see it's not perfectly straight. If we can, oops, I can't zoom in, but on top of the nose, it's because of it's like they're not scales, but or maybe they are, I don't know. Basically, we just want to fine tune all these details to get it as realistic looking as possible. So we're going to remesh it again. So with the upper jaw selected, we're going to remesh at 0.01, hit enter, and now keep in mind, again, don't hit remesh a bunch of times. Hit it once, let it do its thing, otherwise you're going to freeze your computer. So remesh, and this one's going to take a little longer because there's a lot of stuff, a lot of calculations to make. When you do remesh, you'll notice, see how it made these little imperfections on the back, also the eyelid. What remesh wants to do is create perfectly spaced quads, which is fine when it works, but if your topology isn't great, it's going to create little things like that, which isn't too bad. We have to kind of edit the eye socket anyways, so that's not too bad. But you can always push shift to get the smooth brush, and you can just kind of go over those and they'll come right out. Or you can go back a step, undo the remesh, and fix your topology. But that's going to take a long time, so we'll time lapse through. Next time when we come back, the alligator should be done. Basically, all I'm going to do is using either draw or clay strips. We're going to add some bulkiness here. It's all a mix of adding the topology and then using shift to kind of smooth it out and blend it into where we already have it. Obviously, that's I'm just showing you that's not what we're trying to do, but yeah, we'll start the time lapse and we'll see you in a bit. Okay, and I think that's pretty much going to do it. Obviously, there's a lot more we could have done, especially inside the mouth. But as far as sculpting goes, this is a good start. Find images online of stuff you want to sculpt. Use them as reference images, and just keep practicing and get used to how all the brushes react. Now you'll notice on mine, see how there's all these, you can see the topology. So there's a square there, square there. To get rid of these, just hold down Shift and to get to the smooth brush, which I'm already on, or you can just select the smooth brush and just kind of go over it, and that'll get rid of it. And then we can go along here. Don't go too crazy with it, otherwise you'll get rid of some of the details that you created. If you do end up doing that, like I just kind of did a little nostril here. Let's say you go too hard over that, we just go back to draw sharp, and we'll just redo that. And that's pretty much it for the tutorial. I hope you guys found it helpful. Next tutorial, we're going to do a complete character, which that's, if you thought this tutorial was long, that one's going to be a lot longer, but there's going to be a lot of good stuff in there. So keep an eye out for that, and I will see you next time.